Okay. Are we live?
Yeah.
I'd like to call to order the Dartmouth Select Board meeting of January 9th. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21, we will go into executive session and return at 6:30. I do need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Roll
that's
call.
right.
Roll call. Mr. McDonald.
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson.
Yes.
Ms. Brooks.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. We have a unanimous vote to go into executive session. We return at as close to 6:30 p.m. as possible. February 9th, 2023. And please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing for a moment of silence honoring our veterans, both past and present. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Okay. Okay, we've signed the warrant, and we are ready for the first order of business, which is appointments. The first hearing is with Eversource Energy. Step right up. Could you introduce yourself and tell us what you have in mind?
Good evening, members of the board. Jessica Elder from Eversource. Eversource is petitioning to install one joint-owned pole, which is a pole joint-owned between Verizon and Eversource on Lucy Little Road. We're also looking to replace two other poles that are there, 261 over 58 as well as 261 over 56. And this is for new property going in on Lucy Little Road, number 74, as well as 76. Police detail will be hired as one is going to be necessary. And that's pretty much it.
Questions from the board? Motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second. Any comments or questions? All in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed, I hear none. Passed unanimously. Another fantastic presentation.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
I'll see you out there, that shovel. Next, 6:32, we're doing pretty good. It's only 3:30 on that clock. Okay, we got to move along. New application of Lofberg Food Services, DBA Little Moss.
Peter Bullitt.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, board members, wish I didn't have to be here tonight. We're here as a result of human error. We had our deadline that was not met to renew our liquor license, and so we have to file a new application. I do want to thank Melanie for her help in expediting this. She has been very professional and very responsive. And I certainly hope that the people here tonight are not in opposition to our proposal, but everything's the same as before, and I think you have the application in front of you.
Anybody have any comments?
I did not.
I do. I recognize, Peter, that you are the attorney and not the owner of the establishment, but this is there's been a bit of a pattern established here. It happened a similar way last year, and hopefully he didn't serve any liquor for the first 9 days of the year, but that was his option not to. I hope that didn't happen. But next year we discussed this with Mr. McGinnis, if it would happen again, because for some reason he likes to wait, that maybe it should be a time for a fine or something more than that, because it's just not right. Our people in the department don't deserve it, and in the words of my colleague, Mr. Mickelson, the other people who do it on time and do it right, should be respected as well. So if you would pass that on to your client.
Certainly will, and I think your position is perfectly understandable and reasonable.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Motion?
Motion to approve. I see your hat in hand.
Second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, I hear none. Motion passes.
Thank you all.
Very much.
Thank you.
Next hearing is on a new application of Santos and Tutuman LLC doing business as Brazilian Grill.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name's Charles Cobb. I'm attorney for the applicant, and I want to echo the comments that I just heard. I'm sure next year will be different. We're here seeking the board's approval for this establishment's continuing operation.
Is there any need for the repeated speech that I just gave? Because I could do it again and keep talking. Our people don't deserve it. Now, mainly, you heard it. Would you make sure you pass it on to your client that next year, please do it right. If not, maybe it's time for some fines.
Absolutely.
Fair enough.
I understand perfectly. There are two pieces of information that I want to submit maybe through the clerk or,
You can give that to me, yeah. Melanie had mentioned it, so
and,
when you're done, you can just bring it over, I'll grab it.
okay, that's good.
A motion?
Motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Yep.
But I have,
It's a discussion.
I'm looking at the timeline from the online application, and both this one and the previous one were started in the beginning of December. And I'm looking at the end of the timeline. Both of them were sent to the approval step for the Select Board on the 19th. And I know the board voted to have me do these approvals. I don't recall these two being noted on the email sent to me for them to be approved. So the question is why does it say December 19th it was sent to me, but yet I don't recall seeing it? Because if I take a look at,
It wasn't ready.
if I go into the permitting process, and I go into all the notifications, I won't have any notifications, because once I receive a notification and the item has been completed, I delete the notification, because I just don't want to go through
Right.
8, 9, 10,000 of them, whatever how many there are. There were no notifications for these two. Was there something that
I think you
the
received,
applicant
you
didn't do?
received the notifications for the renewals. These, at the time, were renewals, but then once they miss the deadline, they have to
Okay,
apply
so
for a new license.
So in other words, it went through the process, and then something on their end, you just didn't complete it, because I'm looking at the dates here, specifically for this one. I see application content and attachments completed December 12th, payment paid December 12th.
Right, these are the alcohol, you received the
Right.
common vics, and those are the ones that you received, so the
Okay.
alcohol would be different, they go through.
These were not ready for either one of our last
All right.
meetings, because they were done late.
All right, because I get the one day.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Got it.
Okay,
We have a vote in a second.
right. All right, we have, ready to vote? All in favor? Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? I hear none. Passes. Thank you, and you will pass it on to your client.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very
Chairman. Of
much.
course I will.
Appreciate it. Okay, are we going right to the, are we going to change it around? We're going right to finance?
Yeah, right to finance.
Okay. Okay.
I think those are the people involved. Those are the people that work there. So they're,
Well, okay. We have some distinguished guests here tonight from our Finance Committee. We have begun a series of workshops for our Select Board. We've had a couple already, and we plan to keep going. Most notably, after this, we also wanted to have this one before the budget process starts, so we could kind of maybe set a blueprint of what directions we can take and have a discussion. We do plan to do it with, additionally, with the Zoning Board of Appeals. All three fire districts, 1, 2, and 3, together with us in the same room, and others as well. So we're going to try to keep that ball rolling. This one speaks for itself, because you are the main process, the eyes and ears of town meeting and the select board in terms of reviewing the finances, and many of us have been on that committee, so we understand the process, and we welcome you here. So thank you for coming, and we want to end up with something constructive that we can all use properly in the process. Okay? Mr. McGinnis?
Yes, so as part of the kickoff, Gary Guerrero, our interim director of budget and finance, and I worked together to do a budget kickoff meeting. In your packet, you see the presentation, but also the budget memo that goes out to the staff. He's just going to give you an overview of the budget process that we'll be following, that we follow annually, and highlight some items that we'll be looking into. And with that, I'll give it to Gary.
Yeah, I'd just like to bring
Oh,
our
I'm sorry,
committee
introduce the group.
and also,
Some
start
comments?
the
My
meeting.
apologies.
Okay, no problem. We have Terry Ham, William Bowles, Brian O'Hare, John Souza, myself, Bob Gorvin, and Adam Silver.
Thank you. My apologies for that.
Okay. Well, I have some talking points before we do it, so. I want to talk about 4 different things. One, the role of the Finance Committee, our concerns on a national level.
Excuse me, Bob, can you pull that mic a little closer if you can?
Sure.
Thank you.
The role of the Finance Committee, concerns on a national level as far as the economy goes, concerns on a local level, and changes in how we review the budget. Just want to make you aware of those. The role of the Finance Committee is appointed by the town moderator. It's not elected. We have various backgrounds on this committee. We have finance, legal, IT, education, government boards, social workers, and salespeople. So we have a lot of different people with experience. We function as an advisor to the town meeting. We set the financial policies. We review the budget requests of town management for reasonableness, but we are not part of management. The Finance Committee has liaisons with most boards. So we have all different members who take part and attend various board meetings for different boards in the town. On a national level, this is going to be one heck of a year. Inflation, the economy, interest rates are increasing. There's going to be an increase in the cost of capital. The yield curve is inverted, which means that the 2-year treasury is at 4.2 and the long bond is at 3.7, and this is a sign of a recession. Also, the Fed is tightening monetary policy, which will create liquidity issues. So, COVID had its own issues, and there was a lot of money thrown into the economy, but now the reverse is happening. On a local level, we're for the first time in many years, inflation is going to test Proposition 2.5. The government, and when we get into the rates and the taxes, there's going to be only a certain amount of income coming in. We're also concerned, and this is more of the committee, we're concerned with our capital requirements of 6 to 10 years. That's 6 to 10 years. So we always look 1 to 5, but we're just concerned that in the 6 to 10 year period, there may be some big things that are coming down the line. And our various liaisons have asked their boards if there's anything big coming down the line. Can you hear me now? It's okay. We're also concerned about the septic system situation with the regs and things like that. Changes in how we review the budget. This year, we're not going to do every department. When we look at the amount of time we spend on the sizes of the budgets, we said, there are certain, if there's not going to be any major changes, we'll look at the budget, but we might not have them come in and do presentations. There's going to be more emphasis on large departments, specifically schools. We've had a preliminary meeting with Jim Kiley, and when we had the meeting, we discovered that transportation is going to be $600,000 over budget. So there are definitely issues with schools. So myself and Terry are going to be the liaisons to the schools, and we're going to be spending a lot more time with them. We can't get involved in the management. We're not experts in schools, but we will be looking at metrics, and we'll be asking a lot of questions rather than when they come in with their budget and we listen to them for an hour and a half. It's over half the budget is the schools. We will review small departments if there are major changes or requests. There's going to be more emphasis on metrics. And the communications with the town are going to take a little bit different, it's going to have a little different look. In the past, we usually, when we have the warrant, we put our opinion on the warrant, but we also started writing a letter to town meeting talking about things that we were concerned with. And as a matter of fact, Gary's involved with it, but this is Westport, and we're not going to copy it completely, but if you look at it, it's a lot easier to read. They have a lot more pie charts, a lot more comparisons, and so when we hit town meeting, we're going to have a little different package, easy to read and, more informative. That said, that's the end of my talking points. I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything before we get into Gary's presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bob.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Gary.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's a good segue into what I'm about to talk about now. I just would caution people that when they see these numbers up on the screen, these are very preliminary because obviously we don't have a lot of the revenue numbers, and as the budgets are now starting to filter in, and I thank the departments for getting them a little bit quicker than they have in the past. Some of the bigger departments, we know that it takes a little more time. Police, DPW, but all the smaller departments have already met the obligation. So what we'll start to talk about here is, I'll go over this overview. First, we'll talk about the process and the timeline and the planning that goes involved, which is the beginning of what we're doing right now. The policy statement, which everyone has received via email, and I printed out a few copies. The overview, how I see expenditures and revenues for fiscal '24. Capital plan review, as the chairman had mentioned. As we're going through this process, we're going to be maybe tweaking it a little bit before it even gets to CIPC, and some of the challenges that we see on the short term and long term for the town. So as we begin the budget process, obviously October, November has already passed, so we pick up here in December, January. The budgets, as I mentioned, are starting to come in, and what we plan on doing this year is I'll be meeting with all the smaller departments, having the one-on-ones with them, reviewing their budgets, then presenting that to the town administrator. Then the bigger departments will meet with both myself and the town administrator, and this is happening prior to it even being sent to the finance committee. So we want to get this as streamlined as we can before we present a budget to the finance committee. And then when the finance committee starts meeting with departments that they choose, we can go from there. I have had requests from smaller departments already to meet with the finance committee, and I did mention, as the chairman said, if the request is there, then we should probably still honor meeting with them. So then we bring ourselves to the end of February. February 18th, I believe, is what I'm saying is need for the budget, February 10th by 4:30. I'm asking that all the, even the larger departments, we receive their budgets so we can start developing that into one big document. March and April, we start with the review of the budgets on the finance committee and then work our way into a town meeting. Some of the select board goals that we've had in the past, this was very key component of last year's budget when we put that together. Maintain sound fiscal health and low taxes, being in with the constraints of 2.5. As the chair mentioned, that that's going to be difficult as we move forward out of fiscal '24 into '25. We don't know how that looks yet. Expand economic growth within that structure. Long-range strategic planning. We continue to evaluate the town-wide services with operational efficiencies. We've implemented processes as you saw in last year's budget, where we moved staff and created positions where we brought in some of their expertise. Improved communication and transparency to the public. We have the engagement portal that we're using, and support modern governance and government relations. So the financial policies have been adopted for quite some time. These really don't change, and I believe the town in the past has really stood by these. They've done a great job standing by them. Proposed a balanced budget. We really don't have a choice in municipal government. We have to propose a balanced budget. Procedures to balance the budget, meeting future years' needs, and a fully funded operating budget. Number 4, adequately maintenance of replacement of capital. We do a lot of the replacement of capital with free cash. That's been kind of the policy in the past. A 5-year capital program, and the finance committee will be pleased to know that we've now in the capital schedule that we've used, I've incorporated a 10-year plan. So you'll see that you'll be able to put placeholders in there once CPC meets. And even though we've talked about the unknown and what those amounts may be, it's a good document to look at in the aggregate. So when we see the 5-year, we'll also be able to see the 10-year that's standing out there for a lot of the big projects that you'll see in a few slides. Ongoing operating costs funded by ongoing revenue sources. We don't want to generate expense in the town without that revenue source to fund it, which would create deficits in the budget. Free cash maintained at 2.5 to 5% of general fund operating revenues. Any free cash balance, as I mentioned, we utilize for capital. We've kind of adhered to that in the past. And the stabilization fund, which is a key component to when we get rated by agencies, the rating agencies, Moody's, and other agencies, they want to see at least 10% of the STAB fund in being conserved. So we're about 9.6%. I think we made a commitment at last town meeting. So we're in pretty good shape with the stabilization fund as far as being close to the goal. General fund debt, no more than 10% of the less than 5% of the general fund operating revenues. The debt service schedule should be 50% of all outstanding principal and paid within 10 years. We're allowed to go up to 20 years in municipal finance for projects that we may see needed in long term, when we get to that in a few slides. We've limited them to capital projects, and those that are too expensive to fund by capital, we could go out to the market and borrow if we had to. User fees are reviewed every year on a department level. For instance, building, I believe last year or the year before that, increased their fees in comparison to other cities and towns in the area. Grants and gifts, we're always looking at that, supplement in the budget, and economic development strategies. We look at businesses in town, and we try to make the tax rate, if you will, advantageous to both residential and commercial to attract businesses in the community. And the investment practices are in accordance with the town's investment policy. I'll just make a note that, as the chair had mentioned, interest rates are kind of flip right now. We're seeing borrowing rates at the banks, where last year they were 1%. Right now we're getting CDs on the short term for about 4%. So what I did was I've moved some funds around on a short-term basis for a year. We're earning additional sums of money in the investment income line item. So I plan on doing another review in a couple of weeks. Maybe we can free up some more cash and move that into a higher rate, which will help the bottom line as far as revenues are concerned. So the policy statement that you the statement that you have in front of you, which is the this is an abridged version, obviously. Preserve town essential services. We want to maintain level funding, but keep those services in place. The FY24 budget, we can't increase taxes more than 2.5% because of Proposition 2.5. And the third bullet here is important. No net increases to the budgets unless they're uncontrollable. So within fiscal 23 alone, I've had departments come up to me and say that we've already blown through our fuel budget, and we're only 7 months into the year. So I think we're going to continue to see that trend in fiscal 24. So as we put the budget together, we may want to look at what the expenses are for fuel and utility costs, and potentially increase those maybe in the 24 budget. But there are some departments that have already blown through their budget for utilities. As we go back, evaluate staffing roles and responsibilities, which we've done in the fiscal 23 budget and will continue to do in fiscal 24. And fully fund the contractor wage increases, pension, insurance obligations to the employees, and again, continue to look for grant opportunities. So these are very preliminary numbers. This is a projection that we've done for fiscal 24. As I said, once the revenues start coming in, not only from my analysis, but also from the state. We're still waiting. Obviously, it's very preliminary from the state. We're looking that we potentially have operating revenues of about $103 million this year, and operating expenses of about $99 million, $99.4 million, and projected other amounts to be raised, $3.8 million. So this is what I foresee happening in the difference between fiscal 23 and fiscal 24. You'll see that the budget was $101 million. We've projected $103 million for the budget. Here are the differences, and I'll go over in a couple of slides what makes up those differences in what I'm projecting. So general fund operating expenses are comprised of the schools, public safety, public works, community services, general government, debt service, benefits, and insurance. So this is what makes up the majority of the expenses in the budget. As you'll see, insurance is 1%, benefits is 16%, debt service is 4%, general government is 5%, community service is 3%, public works is 4%, public safety is 10%, and the schools are 57% of the entire expenses as far as the budget is concerned. Operating sources for revenues. Number one is property taxes. That comprises $72.5 million of revenue brought to the town. State aid, which is about $14.5 million in revenue brought to the town. Local receipts, which is part of about another $10 million brought to the town. Out of those local receipts, $5 million is generated by motor vehicle excise tax, which is a trend that I track in my office. We're seeing that potentially it may grow a little bit, and I was a little concerned during COVID that because they were saying, okay, there's not computer chips, there won't be, the inventory was down. But I'm confident that in fiscal '24, we're already above about maybe $80,000, and I haven't even issued the February commitment, which is the largest commitment, which usually runs about $4 million. So I'm confident that we'll see some growth in motor vehicle. I don't want to say it's going to be a lot, but I don't think there'll be a decrease in motor vehicle as compared from FY23 to FY24, which is pretty good news, I think, because I mean it was pretty scary because I thought that the bottom was going to fall out of motor vehicle, but it didn't. Indirect costs and other available funds. So here are the revenues for the town. And the revenues are to the right, to the left. They're collected from residential property tax, as I mentioned, state aid, local receipts, motor vehicle excise tax, boat excise tax, meals tax, room tax, and interest and penalties. Interest being the interest on the banks, and penalties are the penalties that we generate for folks that are late on their tax bills, and when overhead and indirect costs, and miscellaneous revenues, surcharges, and debt-related income. So Proposition 2.5 places a constraint on the amount of property tax that can be levied by a city or town in each year. The levy limit is a restriction of the amount of property taxes the community can levy. So we, as you might have seen in the last maybe a couple of meetings ago, we set the tax rate, and we set the tax rate at the max that we're allowed by law. So we cannot go above 2.5. You can go above 2.5, but it requires an override and a vote of the town to do that. So a levy limit can be increased. There you go. New growth. New growth is any new additions that we put onto buildings, new buildings that we build. That all calculates into new growth. Once the levy limit is increased, anyway, it is two ways to increase the levy limit. Becomes the base amount which the levy limits are calculated for the future years. So this information right here is current. The FY23 average home assessment in Dartmouth is $421,000. Residential tax rate is 8.78 per 1,000, and the average tax bill in Dartmouth is $3,696. And that's updated information as we just voted on that, as I mentioned a few meetings ago. So what does Proposition 2.5 do for the town? So we see that here in new growth, we're projecting about 600,000, which is 1%. We're looking at what 2.5 will do, and that will increase the revenues by 1.7 million. Debt exclusions, 995,000, and the base levy, 72.8 million, is what makes up the majority of Proposition 2.5. And if you look at this, this is probably a very key graph to really have sink in. If you look at 2009, this is state aid, so this is everything. If you look at 2009, we're just below 14 million. And then we had a little bit of we had the recession here, and we never really got back to, we got back to 14 million. And over the last 2 years, we're budgeting 14.5 million. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in this year's budget. I've been to a few meetings with the DOR, and they're saying, well, there's excess revenue, da 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 da. It'd be interesting to see whether or not that comes back to cities and towns in Massachusetts. And I don't know what the new administration, what the plan is. But remember, during COVID, they also used their own stabilization money to balance the budget. And that's the reason why you saw like flat line here. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not they use some of the increase in their revenues to replenish state aid, to replenish their stabilization fund, or give it back to cities and towns. So the jury is up. We don't know what's going to happen here. We hope that this increases a little bit, but we've had 2 years of stagnant state aid. And if you look at it the last decade or more, it's pretty much only gotten back to where we were in 2009. So here are some revenue anticipations that we see. By fiscal '25, we're looking at maybe $1.5 million in marijuana sales in the town. New growth potential, this is between fiscal '24 and '26, the Dartmouth Business Park. Again, 3 retail, 1 cultivation manufacturing facilities, the 40B preserve, and new proposed solar installations. And as the chair had mentioned on the Finance Committee, we continue to monitor not only the local economy, but the national economy. We've been consistent in the budget policy, preserve town, as I mentioned, town services. Fiscal '24 will be funded without service loss, the tax increase beyond 2.5%, Proposition 2.5, and no net increases to the budget unless uncontrollable. Again, fully fund contractual wages and continue grant, looking at grants within the budget. So we'll talk about capital planning now. There's been a call by the Finance Committee to, again, look at a 10-year plan, and I thought it was a good idea. Some of these projects, as we know, we don't know what the amounts are going to be, but at least they're placeholders going forward. This explains what capital budgeting is and capital improvements program that we have in town. So here are some of the big items that I could think of, both Sean and I, that are going to be on the horizon. The rec center, Dias Landing, Bliss Corner, Lake Nokichoke, Tucker Road intersection, Dartmouth Schools, and the Peyton Avenue Bridge. I mean, any one of these we could throw a dot at and say today, okay, this is going to be about 15 million. But in reality, when that gets to be built, and when we go to the borrowing, it could be 17 million, 18 million. But I think having a placeholder on the capital plan really puts that into perspective. And we can include these this year as we look at more than 5 years out. Challenges, again, inflation rates, the economy and town revenues. The state could face significant budget challenges, and the OPEB obligation that we had a few meetings ago with the Finance Committee is grown to about $80 million, and we don't even fund the ARC on that. So that's another big liability to the town. So I just wanted people to get a feeling of where we're going to in fiscal '24. And I think that as we look forward, I would say that we even have to be more cautious into fiscal '25 and beyond.
Just to take a breath, I really can kind of absorb what you did. I know this is your first major presentation to us, and I have to say I'm simply amazed you hit the ground running. You haven't been here that long, and appreciate what you've done, Gary. Thank you. I know you're working as a team with others, so thank you very, very much.
Good job, Gary.
Absolutely.
Gary, I do have a question.
You speak. You got. Make sure you speak in the mic. It's okay.
I do have a question. Thank you. When you were formulating these budgets, preliminary, the last meeting, Mr. O'Hare submitted a template to be used with the diverse departments. Did you, in fact, utilize this template?
So after Brian had sent us that template, I sat down with Sean, and we saw that some of the information that was on the template we were already doing, we can incorporate maybe some new ideas. It doesn't limit the Finance Committee, in my opinion, to asking questions that are on that template. And I know that in the past, especially in fiscal '22, when the budget was put together, we had talked about projects that departments are working on that may fall off the map, if you will. Let's say I'm working on Project X, for instance, and I'm at this point in that project. The next fiscal year, when the presentation is given by the department, nobody talks about Project X. They move on either to a different project, and they don't go back to what's the current process. Where are you in that process? So I think the Finance Committee made a good point last year that they want to know on specific projects where we are. And we reviewed the what was given by Brian. Some of it's already incorporated, but I would say as we go through the budget process, we can ask those questions to the departments if the Finance Committee feels.
Well, a lot of it was based in concerns about justification, feasibility, rationale for it. That's what we were looking for. The more background, the better, and the less questions we have to ask when we are reviewing the budget.
I think the key is the metrics, and some of the, as Sean has said in the past, and some of the metrics are measurable, and some are a lot harder for departments to put into writing. For instance, my department, I can tell you how many tax bills I sent out, I can tell you how many demands we put forward, but I can't really tell you what that's done. I can tell you what it does budgetarily, but in the whole scheme of things, I can't really tell you that next year I'm going to send you X amount in revenue, because that's a moving target. Whereas if you look at like maybe the police department, they can talk about certain strategies that they've had, certain goals that they've worked on. So I think we have to take it department by department. But I think looking at the prior budgets that we've looked at, the departments have done a great job at putting those metrics together in the past.
Yeah, if I can add to Gary's point, the Finance Committee has been pretty vocal the last few years about looking for data to make decisions on. So we've been clear with that with the department heads, and I think they've been pretty responsive. Over time they've gotten better at it. And we stress this when we talk about the budget is when you're making budget decisions, you want to have data to back that up. The Finance Committee is going to want to see that data to back up your decision. So, in line with your template that you said when Gary and I evaluated it, there's a lot of that information there. We've stressed a lot with the department heads to come forward with data that helps them make their decisions so they can articulate that to the Finance Committee as well. So we have incorporated it, basically.
Brian?
Brian, Joe? Yeah.
Brian?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, it's fine. Bill asked the question I
Terry?
wanted to.
Terry?
So Terry Ham, Finance Committee member, and I know that one of the things, first of all, I think that the Finance Committee and the Select Board have done a good job over the years of bringing to these meetings concerns, for example, that the Finance Committee has, taking direction, because we understand our role that, we don't set the budget, we don't make those decisions, but one of the reasons I was excited about this process of a workshop is that I think there is a need for more dialogue, and I don't know how it could be structured specifically, but when I see like that list of capital projects, the first thing is Recreation Center. I know we've had a lot of discussion on the Finance Committee about such an idea and the cost of the design and the potential cost of staffing. We wonder how we can have more dialogue about that, especially given issues like, the potential amendments to Title V that are coming up and what solutions might be there. So it's tricky because decisions can't really be made, but I think it's a great opportunity for us to think about how we can do more of that conversation. And again, I want to say we recognize that the Select Board makes these decisions, and for example, with the ARPA list, we wished that we had been consulted or asked for input or something on the ARPA list, although we recognize that's the Select Board's position. But I think, for me at least, I think we're looking for opportunities to work more collaboratively. This is great. We've done parallel projects in the past and just come in and said this is what we decided, and that's really not the most helpful thing. I think this back and forth is very helpful.
I would just like to mention a couple of things. You mentioned the report that you're going to ask the departments to do more work with the Munis software when they're doing the budget, and that speaks of now how much we're doing with permitting in town through online has worked out so well, and I'm hoping that we can develop that. I, for one, coming from finance, I think you got a really great handle on why to handle the budget and review and preparing for town meeting. And what I keep hearing, and I feel the same way, is the real key to your job over and above all that is long-term planning. And we all know that it is a shot in the dark. But I think that I'm looking at something like an ad hoc committee to make up, that's just my thought, can't speak for anybody else, of members. The capital committee works on more, they work in the 5-year. But maybe someone from there or one or two members as part of a committee to say, let's do the best we can to dig into these long-term plans and where do they fit in, and take your best shot. And what it's going to do more than anything is keep it out in front of us and the residents of town, how important are schools versus the paid Narren Bridge versus expense that we had to spend on everyday matters. And I think that would really help, and the way to do that is to set that process aside and do it as a separate kind of collection.
Great point. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I personally would much in the favor of doing something like that and do it pretty soon.
I think that's a really good suggestion, and I think that didn't make the list. I'm aware of what the implications might be for Title V in 20 years if we go the watershed route. which would mean an increase in the sewage plant.
It may have to go right to the top of the list at some point.
Yeah, and I think your point is we can't do everything.
No.
And we have to have some sort of pecking order that's submitted to town meetings so that they can
And,
decide.
and
what's
Sean's made the
important.
point many, many times, that it's really hard to put a handle on how much it costs, how long something's gonna last, and what do we do? Well, we have to take that into consideration when we make that decision. And I think it just can't involve just finance, it can't involve just the select board, it should involve enough people from different various parts of the town who can help put that something together.
Excuse me, that list is a moving target.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
So, you know, in 1 year, a year and a half ago, we didn't know about Title V.
Right, right.
Or
Well,
it
but
was around,
just to
but
point another
it wasn't,
point.
right.
Yeah,
But
that's
it
not
does,
up, it's
right.
not up there. There's a.
Exactly.
It's the water quality as well.
Right, right,
That's not up there. That could be
Most important.
a lot of money.
right.
Okay.
So-
Bill? Bill?
Yeah, all right. As you know, 5-year plans get revisited every year anyway, so to Stanley's point, it is a moving target, so we shouldn't become too enamored so much with a 5-year plan. It's a nice, as you say, conversation piece, but when you get into the nitty-gritty, it probably will have to be tweaked and so on and so forth. And to Mr. O'Hare's point about the Title V, I'm very much concerned with that, with nitrogen levels and the funding's going, how the funding's going to transpire in the town. Is the state going to help out, you know, with septic systems, and how is the funding's going to transpire? And we're very concerned about that, so we'll see what happens.
There, you want to say
To,
something?
well, to the point that was made that we don't really know what it's going to cost, I think it was John Souza that said at one of our meetings, well, we know it would cost today. So to put the cost of what it would be today in there and just kind of keep that in mind, at least it's a little more than a placeholder. But the idea of an ad hoc committee, it's kind of like a steering committee, that I think that's a great idea, you know, speaking as one person.
If I can just add to that, Mr. Chairman, a lot of communities use what's called, they call it a BAG. It's a budget advisory group, and it's a member of the chair, a member of the, it's a member of the select board, member of the finance committee, member of the school committee, or the designee, and they discuss these same issues, and they don't vote. They just, and then they report back to the finance committee and the select board on findings. But we have it, and it's called the budget advisory group. They maybe meet 2-3 times, and they.
Well, I think there's a rhythm to what your work you do, and the rhythm, you're just starting up on your heavy lifting, and maybe that work should start as soon as that's finished, which would be, once you're done with town meeting and the warrant, as the select board is, and we can get that going then.
It's great.
Kind of thing. But I'd be happy to have a separate discussion, or Bob, we can come back and make a plan. I for one, and I don't know if we need to vote or talk about it, but I for one would make sure that this is part of a plan going forward, in whatever time we agree on.
Okay.
Sean?
Yeah, I was a little concerned about the numbers on the OPEB. And the question that I have, I know the town has set a policy going forward in new hires and adding to that. Has that hedged that amount instead of becoming 80 million, 90 million, 100 million? You know what I mean? What has been the impact of that planning with new hires versus not doing anything?
We have an annual required contribution that would help us to have the OPEB not grow. It's helped us to chip away at that annual required contribution, so our overall obligation's been growing slower, and it has made a dent in what we were contributing, so that's what it's been going to. And
Is that good news?
It is good.
Can we see something in writing just to, I mean, we all know, and everybody knows that this is just the white elephant in the room, and it's going to, I understand, the Title V thing is going to impact, but this is a bigger thing that's going to impact even more, especially in the future. So I like to see something.
Want to put it on an agenda for a meeting, and we can.
I just see some kind of just see how it is, and I would prefer. I myself would like to see done in 2 ways. The way it's being done now, and if we weren't doing the new hire, what would it be? So that we can actually see an impact. to see what that is.
Yeah, I think should we bring that data to a meeting and we'll.
Yeah.
Okay.
Preliminary meeting, a preliminary presentation to the Finance Committee, and we discussed just that. If, and Sean is correct, if we didn't have that policy in place, it would grow at a higher rate. The liability to the town is around 79, 80 million, and I believe the ARC that we should fund every year is like 2.4 million. So we don't even come anywhere close to that. But we make a contribution, and that's what the rating agencies want to see, along with a healthy stabilization fund, which the town has. So I think that it's a good point. I think the select board obviously should know.
It also should be listed on that long-term plan.
Yeah, I mean, it is a liability. It is a liability, but I think because it's out of sight, out of mind, and it's sitting out there, and nobody really thinks about it, it is probably one of the biggest liabilities the town has.
Well,
You're
nobody,
correct.
I mean, let's put it this way, whenever it began,
10 years ago, let's say.
but even then, but it all of a sudden, it just didn't start 10 years. This has been an accumulation of things from the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. So a lot of this stuff that we're dealing with now wasn't dealt with way back when, because it wasn't a thing. And everybody said, okay, well, we'll have it, and now all of a sudden, it's whatever chickens decide to come to roost. I mean, one at a time, they're sitting there and plucking their butt down in our nest.
Well, I think that the whole idea of this focusing on long-term plan keeps it out there to continue to prioritize it, know that it's there, and certainly that should be one that's on there. There's no
And
doubt.
not that I'm suggesting this, but there are communities up around the Boston area that have fully funded their liability, but they went and conventionally borrowed for that. And that's a hard sell to the residents, because there's nothing tangible to that.
There
You're
are
not
some
seeing.
towns that don't contribute at all.
Yeah, and you're not seeing a school being built. You're not seeing fire trucks on the road. You're not seeing new police vehicles. You're seeing this liability that's sitting out there that nobody even really knows what it is.
And that really what it comes down to is that municipal government is reactive, not proactive. And it's difficult at times to be proactive when you have a history of being reactive. And this is what it's come down. It's slowly turning. We're getting a little bit better every year in dealing with what we think might be coming and planning ahead. The stabilization fund is a key example of that. 15, 20 years ago, that wasn't there. Sitting on the finance committee and chairing the finance committee when I was in my 30s, what they do now far exceeds what we were doing. And I remember at one point in time, I had basically made the suggestion that the town should start going to zero-based budgeting. Well, that didn't go over well. But, I mean, it's just, things change over a period of time, and new ways of doing things, and new way of thinking, and it's a lot better than what it was 30 years ago. But a lot of it's still the same. So.
Comments?
Go, John.
Mr. Souza.
Thank you, John Souza. I gotta agree with the comments on everybody with the 10-year capital improvement plan. I think that's a necessity that we need to start implementing that. We've got a 10-year capital plan. Just for the fact, you mentioned that, well, we don't know what's gonna come up 6 months or a year from now. There's always something that's gonna pop up that's gonna be huge that we're gonna have to address. And I think it's critical that when those kind of things happen, that we have a 10-year plan so we can prioritize. If I know a must is, $15 million on a water treatment facility that we're gonna need in 8 years from now, and versus, and I'm just hypothetically, this came up in the last year and a half, is the recreational center spending $15 million on that. I think the town's gotta do some real soul searching and saying, what's our priorities here? We'd love to have a $15 million. And again, I'm not picking on it, I'm just using that as an example, is, we got this coming in the future that's not going away, and I think it's critical we have that. So I'm glad we're all on the same page, and we're gonna ask our department heads to implement a 10-year capital improvement plan. But I also wanted, to John's point, the white elephant in the room. I look at, what was Gary did tonight, and does a great job, and by no means am I picking on you, but, we do this every year. We got the budget planning based on select board goals, based on policy, the challenges, short-term and long-term, And throughout this whole presentation, I didn't see one mention of our most valuable asset, our employees. We know we've got an issue, the white elephant in the room, we've got an issue with our employees' compensation when it comes to health insurance, that we need to do something there. And the town has just kicked that can down the road, and it's not going away. Look what's standing up behind me, it's not going away. Is that when we, as leaders, going to look at trying to solve this? I don't know have the answers. I know if we were to go in for an override, in my opinion, it's going to fail. Not that somebody shouldn't try that, but I think we all know that's not going to happen. But is there some other solutions? I don't have the answers, but should we be looking at an example, maybe increasing our contribution by half a percent every year for 10 years? Is that a start? Is that something, the town could budget for and live with, and this gradual increase rather than a 5 or 10% increase to get it back up where they're competing with our neighbors? Because, we're hearing it that in not only municipal government, but in business and industry, there's a problem with retaining people and getting new hirees, and much of it is benefits and pay. So we need to do a better job at it if we want to retain and attract these people. We can't continue to kick this can down the road. And again, I don't have answers, but we need to start talking about it and try to do something. And again, if we can do something gradually, I think it's just a shame that we're not even bringing it up. It's just and I'm not saying people aren't working at it. Don't take that wrong. It's just that it's not even. It didn't even warrant a word in our entire presentation. Our most valuable asset, our employees, and what are we doing to retain them and provide benefits. That's my point.
We kind of cover it under contractual obligations, and that is the employees. And we've had a lot of discussions both on this board and with the finance committee about, every municipality is seeking employees, and we need to be competitive about recruitment and retainment of good employees. We have a lot of solid employees here. We work very hard to do a lot of analysis on what the town can do to address these issues that you're bringing up in a way that works for everybody. There's a lot of balance there. So I can tell you we're working very hard at it. Can't get into the details of it all, but it is a number one priority that the board has talked about, that we take internally, that we discuss. And there's only so much that you can discuss in a public.
And I understand that from a taxpayer's perspective, I'm not on the inside like you folks are. Every 2 months I'm seeing people standing behind me with signs. I'm hearing from neighbors and relatives and friends that there's an issue, and I can appreciate it. As a taxpayer, I don't want my taxes to increase either. But is there something we can start working together to make some improvement somewhere? And it just appears to me as a taxpayer that it's stalled.
For what it's worth, that was
not having privy to what's going on.
That's going to be my final comment. Because if I was in the issues, I'd be here too, holding a sign for whatever it's worth, because I think it's that important. And we have a lot of work to do with it, and you can see we're up against. But as far as this board and body's concerned, no one in town cherishes our employees more than we do, but we have to work out a solution. It's tough. But thanks for bringing it up, John. Anybody else? I would say I'd like to meet, just as far as the long term, you and I can meet. It's not a rush to meet. We put up maybe a little schedule or a plan. We can then go forward. Is that okay with you, Bob?
Yeah. I just want to emphasize again that,
Right ahead.
Especially Terry's the one who kind of started this, the liaisons. So we'll be asking questions well before we get presentations. And Brian has found a lot of information on the internet that and doing comparisons. So we'll be looking separately at our own metrics.
I also want to make very clear and sure that we leave enough time at the end of the process that our meeting to either before or either at the meeting or before, when we approve that budget, you are part of that process and here with us, so we can get the hardcore comments as opposed to, on our own. So we gotta make sure we schedule that. I know it's always a crunch at the end, but we gotta make sure we find a way to have, my preference would be to have you all here in front of us for that final meeting, or maybe the meeting before, to make sure that we understand the vote we're gonna be taking too.
Okay.
Nobody else in this whole town can help us more than FinCom in terms of making those decisions. That's my personal
Why
opinion.
they're there.
Personal opinion.
Okay.
Anybody else? Thank you so very, very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, I wanna-
Keep up the good work.
So I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn the Finance Committee meeting.
Second.
Second by Brian. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Aye now.
Yeah, take a couple.
We're going to take a couple of minute break while we reshift in the audience. Thank you.
I'd like to get this, I'd like to get that text.
We're going to resume the Select Board meeting of January 9th, 2023. Thank you, I'll get that right. And once again, thanks so much to the Finance Committee. They did a great job and a good team, and we're going to make it better and better between us. So thank you again. Next, annual town meeting election memo. I believe we probably have the town clerk. Is that correct? Okay.
By all means.
Yes.
Good evening and Happy New Year. I am before you about the annual town election. And it will be held on Tuesday, April 4th from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at our normal polling locations. And on the back of the memo I sent, you can see what boards are going to be represented on the ballot, in addition to members from each of the 9 precincts for town meeting. Nomination papers are already available. They became available on January 3rd. The last day to obtain nomination papers is February 10th, and they need to be submitted to the Board of Registrars, which is my office, by 5 p.m. on February 14th. And it takes just 50 certified signatures for the major town offices and only 20 in your precinct to become represented on the ballot for a town meeting member. Any questions?
And I see that we're going to have our UMass Dartmouth location from the previous
Yes.
one as well. Congratulations
Yes.
on that. Great.
We're gonna try not to make too many changes unless they're necessary. It's costly, it's confusing, it's distracting, so we will continue there, and that was part of the agreement when we moved that precinct there, is that they would take on all of our elections, not just state elections.
As we move forward, we probably can put that on our new sign out front,
Yes.
that information.
Oh, boy. Okay.
I have lots of information for the.
Well, we'll start with that first.
There's a new policy, though, so I'm trying to.
Personal agenda.
That's why there's a policy.
Let's not overload it.
All the rules.
Let's not overload the sign.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Just one quick, you got 2 precincts being held at the senior center?
Correct.
Okay,
And that has been for more than 2 years.
okay. I just, oh God, this is getting so nitpicky. One line has the COA on it, the other line doesn't, precinct 9. You may want to just kind of, you know what I mean?
So you were the only board that received this. I don't believe this is on the website, but I will make note of that, and I really appreciate you helping me with that constructive criticism.
I'm not a grammar Nazi, trust me, you know. You're there, I could care less.
Oh,
you
I
know.
do care about that, so.
Okay.
It's the way, you know.
We will add that on there, because we obviously don't want there to be any confusion.
Correct.
We want everybody to know where
That's the
they
reason
can
why,
vote.
yeah, that's the reason why. I just want to make sure, because somebody, somewhere down the line is going to say,
They're probably gonna call you or put it on Dartmouth Helping Dartmouth, so I appreciate you helping me with that in advance. I do want to mention that mail-in voting that became part of the law back in July will continue, and it is a requirement for the town election also. So if people send in a request for ballots, they would need to do a new request for 2023, regardless of what you did last year, and we will get those ballots sent out. So that's going to be another way to vote in addition to in-person. There will not be early voting.
one request for the entire year, even though there's only one election this year anyway.
Correct. That's the law. That's what's required by the state. So in 2024, we will have approximately 4 elections, and again, that will cover all of them.
Can we have a form generated and put on the town website so people can download and send in so that everybody's using the same form?
It's already there.
Okay.
And then there's also a link to the Secretary of the Commonwealth, because that's who generates the form. Regardless of what form you send me, I'm going to read it very closely, and myself or my team is going to ensure that people who want a mail-in ballot receive a mail-in ballot.
Okay.
Again, the procedure for absentee is the same, and not to be nitpicking, but the affidavit that is on the envelope that you send in is different if it's mail-in versus absentee, what you're attesting to.
I just want to make sure that the form's on the town website, because if you try to navigate the Secretary of State, you may end up with, you know.
Doug, dog catcher's
You never know
license.
where the hell you're
They
gonna
have a fantastic website.
They
to
got a
be
great website,
perfectly
but
honest.
it's very busy. And you gotta know where you're going.
It is on our website. If anybody calls, we will pop it in the mail to them.
Terrific.
There should absolutely, I mean, if they sent me a handwritten note, as long as it's legible, letting me know name, address, and that they want mail-in for the year, that will also get it done.
Okay.
Have you able to determine how the mail-in in pre-voting affects your job and how it changes the way you do business for an election?
It's significantly more work for myself and my team. My hope and the numbers support, though, that more people are voting.
Okay.
And my hope is that more people will vote for during the town election, which historically has the lowest turnout, but it has the most impact on each of our residents.
Okay.
So
Right.
there should be absolutely no reason why, as a resident, if you're a registered voter, you can't vote in
Right.
the town election, because I will mail you a ballot, I'll mail you the application, you can send me a note, you can send me an email. There are a million ways in which you can notify us to get a mail-in ballot. You can get your absentee ballot sent to you in Florida if you winter in Florida. We'll have all of that well in advance to ensure that people have the opportunity to vote, and then our precincts will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on the day of the election. So my hope is that people will take advantage of that. The date, again, for that last day to register to vote changed in July, so it's just 10 days out. It used to be that you had to register to vote 20 days in advance. The state has shortened that, so, and we're more than happy if anybody calls and wants to check their voter status. I can tell you if you're registered to vote in Dartmouth, where you're registered to vote, and we have plenty of time to get that resolved. That was an issue with some of our UMass students, is that they were unaware of where they were registered to vote in November. We'd love to take care of that for people in advance, and again, ensure that everybody has the opportunity that wants to vote is able to vote.
Given a great meeting, the customer service in the town clerk's office.
We try, and we're having so much fun. We've got lots of fun stuff going on. Everybody should have gotten their census by now. If you have a dog, you can re-register and relicense your dog, and then we're
How
getting
many
ready.
how many registered dogs do we have now in the town?
So last year, we registered more than 3,500 dogs.
Wow. Could have raised the price.
That's more people that vote. You got
In
more
town
dogs than
election?
people that vote.
My
in town
cat's only
elections.
voted
So
4
yes,
times
we have more
each.
dogs that are licensed than vote in the town election, but we do have 23,000 registered voters. So yes, it really is a shame that people aren't coming out to vote.
As pathetic as it is, the most awesome, fantastic, wonderful vote turnout is 25% in this town.
So maybe we can strive for more than that.
Right,
Wouldn't that be nice?
okay.
The more the
And
merrier.
I'm always open to ideas on how I get people out. Somebody made a suggestion, maybe I give out pens, because, New Bedford gives out New Bedford vote pens. If that worked, I would work that into my budget.
I give out jar openers.
Maybe we should look into that. I'm not sure I
As long as you
can.
put my name on it, that's fine.
I don't think I'm going to do that, because I'd really like to get reelected when my term is up, but.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
Okay, we're good. Oh, sorry. We're good?
Yes,
we need a vote
thank
on
you so
this?
much.
We do not.
Okay.
I'd like to mention that previous in the first half of the meeting, Mr. Grace was able to join us by Zoom, so he's out there. Hey, Frank. Okay, next. Appointment of Special Police Officer. Chief Levesque.
Good evening. On December 29th, after almost 42 years of service, Officer Richard Medeiros, who's here tonight, retired. He started back at Lincoln Park as a special police officer, and he's looking to complete the circle this evening and be reinstated as a special police officer. He's met all the requirements for that position, and I recommend that he be appointed to that.
Any details at Lincoln Park available?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Put him back out there.
Not currently.
Okay.
It's changed a little bit over the years.
He can walk Cotton Candy Lane.
We'll put signs up.
Any questions or comments?
I'll make a motion to approve the application.
I would gladly second it.
Comments?
Yes.
Yes.
Normally, we don't get the opportunity to do this, but 42 years on the force. Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, thank you.
Amen to that.
Literally, thank you. That is your entire,
God bless.
and actually, it was pretty good service, too, I have to say.
Okay, we need a,
Excellent
Anybody
service.
could work for Joe Vieira and still maintain on the force. Got it.
For sure.
we need to vote on this, I assume, yes.
Yep.
A motion?
Been made.
Been made,
Second,
okay.
yep.
In the comments, we've done it all, excuse me, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I hear none. Thank you very much for your service, and enjoy.
Richard,
Again for your service.
enjoy your retirement.
Yes.
Yes, don't work too many
Semi-retirement.
details.
Well, still retirement.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
moving along, budget memo approval, Mr. McGinnis.
Yes, this is more of a formality at this point because the board met with the finance committee, but this is the budget memo that goes out to the department heads to put together their budgets. Generally, annually, we have the select board review and vote to approve the budget memo.
Okay.
Looked very thorough.
Yep. Looked
Is
at it
that,
over
is
the
that
weekend.
munis availability going to become something that we're going to really strive to do, where they can do it on there?
Yes,
Is that-
it's our internal application for all our finances, and we've been making a lot of progress in Munis. You know, we do a lot, there's a lot of paper processes we've eliminated. There's some modules that we're looking to implement. That was, if you may recall, we created a new position last year as our financial administrator, financial system analyst, I'm sorry, whose task is to really help to implement Munis applications and leverage the Munis software, much like Chad Deschamps does with our online services. So it's been very successful so far.
Great. We don't need to vote on this, it's already,
We
do.
The budget memo, yes. you
we
do.
do, okay.
Motion to approve
Second.
as submitted.
As submitted. Any comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I hear none. The budget memo has been approved. Next, Town Hall digital sign use policy.
Yes. After.
Mr. McGinnis, after.
Much anticipation, and after ordering the sign 2 years ago, it has finally arrived. It was one of the many things that was a victim of COVID and back ordering, but it was installed last week. We currently have it up and running in front of Town Hall. But one important thing to do, we felt, was to create a policy on the use of the sign and what should be posted. We'd really like to use the sign as just a significant source of information, not to be trivial with the sign and its posting, so that people know when they see something on there, it is relatively important, but we also want to demonstrate what's going on in town. I've tried to elicit some of the things that we would like the sign to do, which is enhance communications and transparency, help Dartmouth be more welcoming and informative, recognize achievements and events within the town, and promote safety and awareness in the community. We've just established some guidelines on how it's used, who to contact. So the posting initially would be done through the select board office, and departments would contact the office for a request to post information. Currently, we've posted the solicitation for CDL drivers for snowplow. That's
Did
our
we
first
get
posting.
any answers?
Yes, we have received, I want to say we received 3
Excellent.
applicants. We still need a few more, so that's why we've posted it on the sign up
Great.
front.
That's
Yes.
great.
Hey, questions. I remember when we had digital signs, like the one that was at the intersection of Sean McDonald's favorite, Fons Corner Road, the electronic sign for the bank. And there was a question about how often it should change, how many lines it should have, because people could be driving and trying to wait for the sign. I know there's a lot of rules
It's a
and.
bylaw.
There is a bylaw, but this is, it's a pretty short window of words, and have we, is it easy to establish what the rules should be, or how are we going to handle that?
Well, the sign does quite a bit. It can do animation. It can do many things with letters. So when you create the slide, you can see what it's going to look like.
Well, I was
So-
thinking more, I'm driving by, and you got about 3 seconds from me, and you don't want me to, so in terms of that sequence of how it should happen.
How long is the,
rules to follow?
how long will be the post, basically?
We try to keep them brief. We obviously preview them before they go up, and we can set the amount of time the text is displayed before it
Right.
goes to the next
Right.
set of text.
Correct.
It's generally about 5 seconds. So we don't anticipate there is an issue, but, we will monitor it. I mean,
It's not in the bylaw about.
I believe the planning board did it.
No, but the actual timing is not in the bylaw.
No, just,
So we got to be careful with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we're trying to centralize it through the.
Yes.
the whole idea was not to be disruptive to someone driving,
Correct.
obviously.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was when we first started with these digital signs, so it was really new for the town.
Yep. Okay.
So there was always a challenge.
So we need to be more cautious and less in the beginning in terms of
Correct.
distracting
Yes.
drivers.
And the policy is open for interpretate, we'll revisit it over time.
And I'm going to assume that as part of our select board updates, we're going to be recommending signs from this board as to what we should put up there as well.
Correct.
Do we need to vote on this? I'm
Yes.
sure we do. Do we have any comments or questions? Discussion?
Make a motion to approve as submitted.
Second, Frank's got a question, I think.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I would think with the traffic problem we have, if we put it up near the mall somewhere, people should have 2-3 minutes to read whatever is on there.
I didn't hear that, I'm sorry.
Can you speak up a little more, Frank?
I said, given the traffic problem we have around the mall, if we put the sign up there, we should have should have 2 or 3 minutes to be able to read anything.
All right.
Not at the mall.
Well, the one at the mall has been, I think it's not been much of an issue because it seems to be working okay. And we haven't had any.
The one we're talking about.
Well, this is the one, the town hall sign, so, and that's a different circumstance because people are going to be just driving by as opposed to sitting at a stop sign.
I mean, it's just basically what you want to do is you don't want to keep it so that people have to, slow down to read what it is or just, the normal course of business.
Yep.
And you just keep it up longer and repetitive so that, any time of the day, they could probably come by and read the whole thing.
There's an absolute expertise about doing it, and
Yeah.
the people who do that for a living, and we need to make sure we follow it.
But I do know the police, well, the signs that have been up and giving information, I think it's been like, I'm going to credit the police department, but it's had like 3 waves to get the entire message.
Yes.
But it goes quickly enough
Yeah.
that when you see it, and before you can drive by it, you've seen all 3 screens, so you get the whole message.
Have you had any issues with that, Chief, in terms of the sign, the way, the sequence of how it works and the timing and all, or?
No, it depends on kind of the sight lines too, how
Right.
long people have to see the sign essentially, so we try to time it properly so they can see the whole message without having to slow down.
So I think you can probably help us out, guys on the road.
Yeah,
Men and women can help
yeah.
us out in terms of if there's an issue with our sign out here. I'm just really.
No, I would
concerned.
think so, because their signs are, I think, work well.
Okay. I think we got to take that issue extremely seriously. Yeah, I know you have, but. Okay, Frank?
Yes.
Okay. We're ready to vote. All in favor of the Town Hall digital sign use policy, please say aye.
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 Opposed? I hear none, pass unanimously. Thank you. Thanks for the work on that, Joe. Okay, now we move on to a town council services contract. Mr. McGinnis.
Yes, so in your packet, there's a town council services contract for support of town labor council. We've worked with our town council, Anthony Savastano, to provide more support, particularly to the police department, for some of our labor council. He's reviewed it and recommended it, and it's been shared with the board.
It's a policy stated who the firm's going to be and what they do and how they do it and what they charge. It's
Correct.
pretty self-explanatory. Anybody?
Make a motion that the town engage the services of Mead, Tollerman, and Costa LLC for labor council services for any services for and with and by the police department only.
And excuse me, just to clarify this, how long might this be?
There's no term, so it's
Okay,
for as
So
long
it's
as.
an open
Correct.
contract? Okay.
And
Gives us
also,
time to
we'll also review the
use it.
whole
Right.
performance within a
Correct.
reasonable
So-
time as to how it's working out.
Right, as long as it's working
Yeah,
out.
we'll-
If it's not, we can part ways.
Work with the
I'll
chief
second
closely
that.
on that, too.
Yep.
Okay. Frank, you'll have to recuse yourself on that?
No, he doesn't.
Yeah, but he didn't read anything.
Was not in the conversation.
It's in his packet.
He has this in front of him.
He had the document in his packet.
Okay.
So he doesn't, so just as a clarification, the firm charges an hourly rate of $250 per hour. The firm will not charge for any work performed by paralegals or support staff. The firm will also provide one training session for the town. And then the internal costs such as telephone services and are not utilities and clerical assistance are not the municipality's responsibility. That's pretty much the basic of the
Okay.
of the contract. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the hourly rate is slightly less than what our current labor council has.
That's correct. And it's local.
And, right, and they're local. They're out of, well, they
The
have
same.
two offices,
Right.
Millis and New Bedford, though. Three offices, actually.
In a second.
Second, right,
We can
okay,
vote.
this
Yep.
discussion, okay. Are we ready to vote? All in favor of approving the town council services contract, please say aye.
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 Opposed, I hear none. The contract is in place. Next. Sorry I had to make you people wait, but now we're going to talk about the Mass DEP Title V Amendments update. Mr. Michaud? You want to give us a little background update first, and we can continue the discussion? Is that all right with you?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
For the record, Christopher Michaud, Director of Public Health for the town of Dartmouth. So, I do want to back up a little bit, and you'll see why as I move through these various points. Because I've looked at the regulations, and I've looked at them from all angles, and we have concerns. Back in November, Assistant Town Council Cruz stood here and mentions his concerns about the watershed permit. But let's go back to May 27th of this year. On May 27th in the afternoon, I received a call from the Mass Department of Environmental Protection advising of the proposed changes to Title V, that they would be contacting us in the coming weeks to schedule a meeting to further discuss the proposed changes. On June 1st, Commissioner Martin Suberg wrote a letter to Cape officials. And in the letter, he noted how Mass DEP was writing to inform of regulatory revisions that DEP is developing to ensure that timely actions are taken to restore and protect coastal estuaries from excessive nitrogen. Now, the reason why I start out with that, and I go all the way back to about 6-7 months ago, is because there's something really deceitful about those statements and those dates and the call to us. Because on May 27th, a document was filed in the Barnstable Superior Court, which was a stay order. And that is an order that was between Mass DEP, a settlement order, and the Conservation Law Foundation. And in that order, it has a timeline. That timeline said that between May of 2022 and September, that they would announce their rulemaking process. In October, they would release draft regulations. And by January, they would promulgate regulations. They would report back to the court in February, and I believe there's a hearing scheduled in March. So the whole thing is a big check mark. The whole idea of public comments is nothing more than, we don't have to listen to you, we just have to undertake this process. Because about a week and a half ago, I discovered Mass DEP's mission statement. We all have a lot of mission statements, a lot of departments do, and in their mission statement, it says that the department will have inclusive opportunities for people to participate in agency decisions that affect their lives. We're only being provided with that which is provided by the legislature for due process of law. And apparently, they don't care what we have to say because they're going to promulgate those regulations shortly after. Now, we got a little bit of a pause, but they're getting a lot of comments, so obviously they need time to write on those comments. So it's really concerning because there's no hiding it. Mass DEP doesn't care. They're embedded with special interest on this. We've seen the composition of the nitrogen sensitive area subcommittee. We've done multiple records requests. As of Friday, I've issued the 5th appeal to the Secretary of State, trying to pry records from them that they do not want to give up. We paid them the $1,275 on December 20th. I knew what they would do. So I sent it with tracking this time because they don't sign the green card. So on the 10th business day when those records were due, I got an email from a DEP staff member saying, "Oh, Mr. Michaud, we got your check. We'll start processing the request now." No. You had my check 10 business days. So I filed an appeal. It's apparent that they're trying to hide these records from us because they have not produced records up until that point in the time required by that administration at that time. Well, actually, I think as of last Friday, we were already transitioned. So apologies on that. But they were due on Thursday. So why are they hiding these records? Why don't they want to give up? Why didn't they want to give up that NSA subcommittee composition? We saw it. They have not addressed that publicly. And now we find out by back examining through court documents that Commissioner Suberg was very much aware of, that he wasn't writing with sincerity that he was doing this about the environment. He was trying to get one lawsuit off his back and make it our problem. So this is no longer about the technicality of these regs and, the problems with them. This is about government transparency. This is about government being embedded with special interests. I've lost complete faith in this aspect of Mass DEP, and it's deeply concerning because they're doing good work in other aspects of the functionality of DEP. And what do they say? One bad apple spoils the bunch. But yet we're relying on them heavily, and they're doing great work in our Bliss Corner. They're working with our DPW and the water department. They also do other great things for us in other aspects with solid waste as well. But the Boston office, with this and composting, they're doing a terrible job. They're not looking out for us. They're looking out for the special interest. So, another document I found which is deeply concerning is a motion for enlargement. And in the motion for enlargement, which was filed on 9/13/21, there's a paragraph in there. Between September 16th, 2020 and September 10th, 2021, the plaintiffs, the CLF, have engaged in good faith settlement discussions with each of the defendants by written correspondence, phone, video communications. So as soon as the CLF filed their notice of intent to file suit against a government agency, be it Mass DEP, on 9/16, they almost immediately capitulated and entered into settlement agreements. So what I also find interesting is that just before that, in the nitrogen sensitive area subcommittee handout, they had a very different approach. Their approach was to have an implementation schedule for these new requirements, new and existing. There was nothing in there about everybody within 5 years. But in looking at the documents at the Barnstable County Superior Courthouse, they capitulated entirely to what the CLF wanted, a 5-year approach. How often do you go into a settlement agreement and just give them everything? So at the last select board meeting, I played some sound bites. So with what I've just said, how they gave everything to the CLF that they wanted, they've excluded us from the public process. They've pretty much, I guess, the only people in the Commonwealth that they solicit comment from must be the CLF. I guess we're not part of that, because they gave the CLF everything they wanted. And then also the watershed permit. And as I evaluate the watershed permit, I grow more and more concerned, because we're being led to believe that we can control all these sources of anthropogenic nitrogen, human causes. But that's from an academic perspective. On the local level, there's a lot that we cannot control. Fertilizer. Fertilizer is regulated outside of Nantucket and Cape Cod exclusively by the Commonwealth. And we know they've done nothing. There's been no enforcement in the 7 years since the Commonwealth has taken the reins on enforcement with fertilizer. So when I start whittling down the pie chart to what is truly controllable, it almost always comes back to wastewater, 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 because that's where you're going to get your biggest bang for your buck. So when we start talking about watershed permits, I caution you, there is going to be an enormous expense with that, because one way or another, it's going to be either sewering or these best available nitrogen reducing technologies. And I'm in no position to talk about what the cost of sewer will be, but without a cost benefit analysis, will we be able to sewer cheaper than 40, 50, 60,000? We don't know. We know that we have outlying pots that sewering will be far greater than any sewer extension that we've ever seen. Bayview was around 26,000, I believe, back in the 08-06 time period. Nowhere does DEP, when they first announced these watershed permits, that there is an outright exemption from putting these systems in. In fact, sometimes they go on to say, yeah, these installations are part of watershed permits, or they can be. The difference is we're making those decisions, not them. So the people will be rejoicing that, hey, I've been spared this, but it always comes back to the taxpayer. Because in one way, shape, or form, the taxpayer is paying the bill. Even if it's going to be sewer installations or loans. And the other thing is, I was downstairs listening, and I was hearing about watershed permits, and I caution you upon against it, because initial studies are showing that there's a problem, and that the problem may be coming from the east side, the sewered side. Could it be coming from New Bedford? Why would New Bedford want to enter into a watershed permit that could mean expenses and liabilities to the city of New Bedford? They'll go with the 5-year. Everything is sewered. I can't imagine they'd go into. So if we go into a watershed permit, we're going to be bound by reductions. And if we don't meet those reductions, even if DEP says, well, we're going to, we'll work with you, we are open to a third-party lawsuit, the same type of lawsuit that's driving these regulations. It happens throughout Cape Cod, and it happens in Massachusetts. So don't believe DEP that they'll work with us, because we are much at risk under the watershed permit through non-compliance through a third-party lawsuit. The only way we're going to change all this is if people really get mad and speak up. Is this how we want our government working and serving us? I still haven't heard one person yet that said, I want a worse environment. We've got a worse government agency here. Probably the worst I've seen in 27 years. I can't think of a worse example. So, if we do nothing, we say nothing, we don't come unhinged, this is going to pass. Because they're already hiring staff for these new regulations. It's posted on mass.gov. So next week, on Wednesday, they're coming here to Dartmouth. I say that's reconnaissance. They're coming to test the waters to see if it's still hot.
Exactly, exactly.
And if people don't turn out and scorch them, they're going to use that as a sign that it's all blown over. So we have a new administration. I really hope that that new administration is listening, because I know they're aware of these regs, because I had a conversation with the individual whose name from the Attorney General's office, now governor, is on these documents, who represented the Commonwealth. I hope they're listening, because they said they're going to do an equity audit. Well, I looked up, what is an equity audit? I think I know what it is. You know, make sure that everyone's getting their fair share of equitable government services. Are we? CLF is getting more than their share. We've been put in the corner, told to shut up, because one of the nitrogen-sensitive area subcommittee members, who is a quasi-state official, because he was appointed to serve on that advisory role, said to DEP, without identifying his role, don't listen to the noise. These are good regulations. So that's about all I have to say. I'm still trying to write out a letter, and the longer I go without finalizing it and saying this is done, the more I have to write about. It's that bad. We can do better. You know, there was nobody on that subcommittee from the Buzzards Bay Action Committee, which is a group of municipal officials. It's a broad stakeholder group from the area. There was no one on that group from the Division of Marine Fisheries, who is our nonpartisan expert in Massachusetts on marine life. There was no one on there from Fish and Wildlife, but there was from Audubon. So how are all people included in this agency decision that's going to affect our lives? I'm still waiting to hear from them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Comments?
Comments, we need to.
This is I commend Mr. Michaud for, trying to tie the tail of this tiger. And we're not alone, as he said. Every other municipality will be impacted, but we have the coastline, which adds to our concerns, and we have nitrogen concerns before this Title V came in. So I applaud his efforts, and I hope that people attend. Especially there are people in town that would be directly impacted by changes to this.
I would add that one of my purposes of making sure this should be on our agenda all the time, every week, which it is, but I'm thinking of that meeting on the 18th, that in springboarding off an idea, a suggestion that Mr. McDonald made, that we try to gather support from our surrounding towns. And one suggestion I have is that we contact an official we can decide on who will be in the towns that we think will be most effective, and invite them to that meeting. We'll be there, and maybe even have a meeting before or after that session, and then produce a letter that would be from that group, and whatever that group is. Obviously, Westport's very involved, but certainly New Bedford is. But what about? I know you could go on forever and go all over the place, but we got a short-term window here to get Fairhaven and Marion, Mattapoisett, obviously the obvious ones.
Right.
I'm thinking that we make our best effort to reach these people, tell them we will be there, and the meeting's at 6 o'clock, and maybe we could meet at 5 o'clock with a group. I don't know how it'll fly, Mr. Michaud, but I'm thinking that if we're the ones that are there, then we are there as a town. But it would be a short-term way, a quick way to get as many friends of this issue together.
Is there any way of getting a regional meeting together on that day before? On that day, say around 1 o'clock?
Tuesday, is it?
No, on the Wednesday.
Same day.
Same day, yeah,
Oh,
that's
right,
what I'm
right,
saying.
okay.
Right. Is there any way we can how fast can that get done?
My vision, and I had this discussion with Mr. McGinnis, was that tonight we decide which towns we want to contact. We go right to them directly, even if it's by a letter, email, or even phone. and tell them we're going to be there. We'd love you, some official from your town, to be there with us.
All right, let's do, I'll be honest with you, everybody.
Yeah, Westport, New
Everybody.
Bedford, Fairhaven, Marion.
Somerset.
Marion,
Somerset, Swansea.
Mr. Michaud, you got a comment on it?
Everybody.
Here it comes.
I agree. And the reason why I agree is it just shows another aspect of DEP really being clandestine with this, because these regulations affect any watershed to an embayment. An embayment. And they don't define adequately what an embayment is. We now know that there is interest, by some to look at Allen's Pond. So that little small section over in the southwest corner of Dartmouth that may not have been impacted eventually may, if Allen Ponds does get studied. So if you're along the coast, shame on DEP for not drawing a line to show which watersheds may be impacted by these regs. They just show those color-coded and mislead people to go, hey, I'm in Marion, Mattapoisett. I'm not color-coded. I'm fine.
for now.
But anybody looking at the water, all you have to go is to the state of Massachusetts website. Take a look at the watersheds in the state, and it's the entire state. All 23 watersheds in this state are the entire state. So to say that these other communities are not effective right now, they will be.
DEP should be doing a better job at showing the impact of these regs, because that color-coded chart, it is really misleading, and it is drowning out the noise.
Their strategy of bunching us together with the sand-filled geology of the Cape Cod is trying to bunch us together. And I think that if we can somehow join these communities together and as best we can, as quick as we can, to make a statement, and then once this goes forward, we can and then keep it going. I think that we make an attempt to do it. And you can go all the way from Swansea and Somerset to Wareham if we wanted to, and just invite them.
Why not?
Yes.
What harm could it do?
And we would contact.
I mean, whoever shows up, shows up.
We contact UMass Dartmouth, look for a room, and wait. And what's our goal? Our goal is some kind of a communication to DEP as a group saying whatever we want to say.
Well, I mean, as far as the location, I mean, if we hold it somewhere in town, Rachel's Lakeside or whatever.
Well, the meeting is at 6.
Right, but I'm just saying, our meeting could be at 1.
Oh.
Not right before, 1.
Oh, we can do that.
Because this is going to take more than an hour to discuss.
Then 4 o'clock. I just think realistically to get someone to come at 1 or 2 and then go to the school at 6, it may be difficult.
If they are concerned and they are concerned about their community, they will show up.
Well,
that would tell me, a 1 o'clock meeting will tell me a lot about the concern from other communities as to what these things are going to do.
And they just have to send 1 or 2 members of
Right.
their committee.
I mean, and they don't have to go, I mean, to be honest with you, they don't have to show up at the UMass Dartmouth. They can sign up for it and sit at home and do it on the computer. Might not have the same impact,
Well, I think a show of force at the meeting would help. I'm not saying that
But David, we can't control what other people
No, whoever
wanna do.
shows.
Right.
Yeah, whoever shows.
We can't control what other people do. We
No,
can
but we're
only
asking-
control with what we have.
But we're asking them to participate. And I think the easiest way may be to have it at 4 o'clock at that building. This is going to take a lot more meetings than just one. And what are we trying to accomplish here is to get people together at that place and make a joint statement. That would be enough to get started.
We also need to talk about potential litigation against Mass DEP.
Agreed, but I just want to try to make it as easy as convenient as possible, knowing that it's a short term and people have, commitments. And if they're going to go to this meeting, we're asked to go a little bit earlier. Would it be nice to have it in 1 and we can talk for 3 hours and come up with all kinds of stuff? Great, but I think it's more realistic to make it as simple. And then subsequent meetings after that are going to really have some teeth to it that we could, that's my view. I go with the majority.
Well, let's get this email out to these various cities and towns that surround us. And
who do we contact, Sean?
Off the
Board of
top
Health?
of my head, Members of the Board of Health of these
Yeah.
committees
Board of
from
Health.
It should
Wareham
be,
to
it
Wareham
should
to
be,
Somerset.
it should be the select board, city council, or whatever, and it should be also the Board of Health.
Okay.
Okay, and
Let
if you
them
wanna
decide,
throw
yeah.
in, you wanna throw in DPW, you
I would
can if they want.
Why not?
But it's gotta be from Border to Wareham.
Well, the letter could encourage them to bring as many others as you like, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I wanna go from Seekonk to Wareham, and I also wanna go up. You know, not just, you know, Freetown, Cushnet. Well, that's part of, yeah, Freetown, Cushnet, Lakeville. you know,
Bristol
Taunton,
County.
You know,
You could
Bristol
do
County,
all
because, I mean, to be honest with you,
Rochester.
part of this, Rochester.
Rochester,
Part
right.
of these, where we are, start somewhere else with the watershed.
Somewhere you might be able to solve.
Right.
We're right to either the city government or the select board and the Board of Health, and let them, encourage them to bring as many people as they would
Yeah, it
like.
should be all of Bristol County and part of Plymouth County, our area. Middleborough,
We might get surprised.
yeah.
I personally strongly feel about 4 o'clock at the university.
I mean, you can, hey, invite the Cape if you want to too. Whether they decide to show up, that's on them. Invite the Cape, because more than likely, I'm sure we're gonna have some people from the Cape at this meeting.
But on the other hand, the main purpose of this initial meeting only, is that we've been bunched together with an issue that we have no right to be bunched together by. And that is this coastal community that is so different than what they're doing on the Cape. That's the number one purpose.
Right.
So,
We've got one similarity to
Yep.
the Cape. Because at this point in time,
Yeah, we're getting screwed by DEP.
To put it
excellent
mildly.
point. And on the second similarity, Westport only has, they got a little sliver of the Slocum River. It's immeasurable. We got 3 watersheds that we're potentially looking at in the very near term of these proposed regulations. And whoever's sitting here in these 5 seats, when that day comes, is going to be making some very difficult decisions, because it is the executive board of the town that will make the decision as to whether or not they enter into the watershed permit. And, you know, when you're looking at all of the complexities, how do you do one and not all? How do you do 2 and not 1? I can't think of anything that'll tear apart a town more than that. So, you know, just think about that for whoever's going to be, you know, sitting in these chairs in the future, because that's a tough decision.
I 100% agree, but my focus tonight is on the 18th and getting as many people together as we can, whatever time that is.
That's mine as well.
That's the starting
No,
point.
And we hope that we fill someplace so much we got to stand outside. But we have a motion of as to when and how we do this. Yes.
I don't know if you need to make a motion. I think you've been clear. We'll contact.
Get it
timing.
done.
I guess it's more about the timing and the place.
Let's get it done.
Well, we have to, Sean has to
Well, the
figure out a
email's gonna
place.
have to be specific about time and place. So I'd go along with David, 4 o'clock, even 3:30, you know, to give us a little extra time in case we get a large
I
turnout.
think we'll have a chance to get a room at the university.
I'm
sir?
meeting with the chancellor tomorrow, so
Beautiful. Okay.
perfect timing.
Maybe you'll have lunch for us and stuff too.
Don't push it.
4 o'clock?
No.
Well,
Don't feed
a
them.
late lunch.
Don't
Okay.
push it.
Okay.
Don't push it.
Okay, thank you. Great. That's
Thank you.
we don't need a motion or anything like that then. Anybody have any other comments?
No, just get it done.
And I think that the last message we have is that this board understands what's going on here, and this is probably at this point in time, our number 1 priority in town. And we're led by, thank you for showing up, Mr. Michaud, and Rob Albee, thanks for standing by us as well. We appreciate, anything you want to say?
We'll see you on the 18th.
No, Rob Almy, Chair of the Public Works Board. I think you guys need a little humor. This business about same regulations everywhere reminds me of an old saying that consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds. I'll leave you with that. Good night.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you so very, very much. Okay, all set? Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, DHAS recognition by the Genealogical Society. Would you want to say something about that, Mrs. Brooks, to open up? Is that okay?
Yes.
Please step forward.
Before us tonight is Bob Harding. He's a member of the Dartmouth Historic and Arts
Thank you for
Society.
letting me take the rest of your evening.
You pull down the microphone. There we go.
Is that better? I'm hard of hearing, so
Oh.
you'll have to speak up when you speak to me.
Mr. Harding.
I wanted to come and share with you some of the things that are happening here in Dartmouth that you might not yet have heard about, and I want you to hear about them before other people do. And the project that I want to talk about is already published electronically. You know that the Society has been working for the last 3 years on transcribing the Dartmouth Quaker meeting minutes of the Quaker meeting from Dartmouth from 1699 to 1785. And the hardcover book that is being printed from these transcriptions is not yet available. It will be available in a few weeks. It's a book of 2 volumes, 1,600 pages. Think about that. That's 2 books like that, dedicated to our friend Dan Socia, who passed 2 years ago. And that book is going to be distributed in a couple of weeks, and we're donating complimentary copies of that book to 350 targets, which includes libraries and genealogical societies, Quaker meetings, and a whole variety of places that we think should learn more about Dartmouth history. And we'll probably make a few available to you also, so you can read them in your spare time. To give you an idea of, these are literally day-by-day records of the history of old Dartmouth, which includes, of course, all of the towns, not just Dartmouth. And I wanted to share with you comments from historians, genealogists, and Quakers to show you what people think of the work that we here in Dartmouth have done. And first of all, I'm going to start out with historians, some very respected historians from the Colonial Society of Massachusetts. That's the group we've worked with to publish the books. They've paid for most of the cost of the publishing. And in their newsletter for 2022, on page 4, I'm going to read what they say because I would be embarrassed to say it if it wasn't a quote. This is members of the Colonial Society, can expect to receive in early winter 2 volumes of the minutes of the Dartmouth Mass Monthly Meetings of Friends, 1699 to 1785. These volumes are a cooperative venture with the Dartmouth Historical and Arts Society, an extremely ambitious and active historical organization whose efforts and accomplishments put all similar associations to shame. If you don't believe me, visit their website, big long website thing, dartmouthhas.org, Upon-Agansett Friends, and you'll see that the 1,400 pages contained in these 2 volumes, it's 1,600 with the index, that's why are only a small fragment of what they've already made available online. So that's the Colonial Society of Massachusetts, and that was written by a guy named John Tyler, who's their general editor. He's the guy we've been working with. In another situation, some very highly placed genealogists, who you know what genealogists are, I don't have to explain that, I'm sure. And I wrote a letter myself to a guy named David Dearborn, who was the head of the Association of Genealogists. And I said, I write to you as the president of the Dartmouth Historical and Arts Society while we await the arrival of the hard copy versions of the recent Colonial Society of Massachusetts DHAS publication of the Dartmouth Quaker Minute transcriptions, which were eloquently annotated and introduced by Thomas Ham. Thomas Ham is a Quaker scholar from out in the Midwest. The book's impact is being noticed, and I'm sharing 3 recent newsletters you may or may not have seen. I also have a question to ask of you. And I sent him 3 newsletters, including the one I just read to you, as well as one from the Quaker New England Yearly Meeting of Quakers, which is the large Quaker organization for all of New England, and one from the Cape Cod Genealogical Society. I won't read you those. They're just as praiseworthy as the one I read. And I'm telling him that my question is, given that the electronic version of the 2-volume is available here for reading and review, and that while we still await the hardcover version release, expected in a few weeks, would you briefly peruse the electronic version and provide your candid impressions of our work? It would be wonderful to have serious genealogical scholars' evaluations when we officially announce the hardcover for the public. And I sent him the links to all these things. And what he wrote back is what I want to really get your attention to hear about our Dartmouth work. Dear Mr. Harding, I was delighted to have the opportunity to peruse these 2 volumes, which are truly monumental in scope. For anyone with an ancestral connection to the Dartmouth area, having these records available in print will unlock a gold mine of genealogical information. For the historian, they give a valuable insight into Quaker practices during the colonial period and to Dartmouth area local history. These volumes will stand as models of how such records should be transcribed and annotated. I am also impressed by the depth of indexing of both names and subjects, making the work valuable for not only genealogists, but also students of social and religious history. You've done a great service, and I congratulate DHAS on this mighty accomplishment. I just wish I had ancestors who lived in this part of the world. With best wishes, David C. Dearborn, President, the American Society of Genealogists. Now, I don't expect that you guys are all familiar with who's who in the world of genealogy, but this American Society, that's the group that gives accreditation to other scholars. They have 50 fellows who have the FASG designation behind their name, and it means they're fellow of the American Society of Genealogists. That's like the imprimatur of scholarly work in this area. So that's what the genealogists had to say. And also, I've got some quotes, if I can find them, of what the Quakers had to say. It's stuck together here. And I got a few quotes, and this will be the end of it. I know you've had a long night. I appreciate the fact I've been in another meeting while I was waiting.
You've had a long night, too.
Yeah, so, the first quote is from Beth Kalia, and she is the coordinator for Quaker Religious Education Collaborative of the New England Yearly Meeting. She says about our project, a Dartmouth project, an enormous project which will benefit friends and the wider community and the wider society. Many thanks. Blessings on your adventure in Quaker history. A new archival resource for friends, this exciting project. A treasure trove of material about friends in the early years of our nation and in the New England Yearly Meeting. Betsy Kasdan, a member of the New England Yearly Meeting Archives Committee. I only wish we had a couple $1 million so we could do this with all of our records, at least the digital version and the full transcription. I won't read you any more, but I know that I've taken a lot of your time. I appreciate you waiting for me to come in from the other room, and I am really grateful working with the town. We have just approved with the help of Cody. Cody Haddad has been working with us on a new lease, and we've agreed with him with the latest version. You'll be seeing that soon. I will be signing, so you can sign. It will go on for another 3 years and maybe another 6 years, continuing to try to explain the history of Dartmouth and help spread the word that we are alive and well, even though we're an old town, and we're getting things done, even though we're a small town. So I'll take questions if you have any.
I have a question. How long have you been working on this particular?
When I started working on this book, I had hair, and I was 6 feet tall. It was
It's been a while.
Over 3 years ago. Wow. And this book has only got 1,600 pages in it, but we did 6,000 pages of transcription. If you've ever read the old writing, you know transcribing it is not easy, and trying to get it so you're authentically accurate with what they wrote takes triple reading and proofreading and stuff. And we're only publishing in hard copy these 1,600 pages. We're hoping to publish others. All of it's done electronically. It's all available. You can go to the Colonial Society of Massachusetts website under the publications, and you can read the book. I don't know how long it's going to take you to read 1,600 pages. But if you're interested in a particular family, you can look up in the index, and it'll take you right to where to look. Nice. And you'll also get a little overview of the original history of this town. A lot of people don't realize that we used to be a frontier town. This is the frontier of Plymouth Colony. Right. Most of Plymouth Colony is to the east of this. We're way out in the west. Right. And the people who came here are a bunch of oddballs because they didn't want them anywhere else.
Right. They stayed.
They came out here. All
they never left.
Conformists came to Dartmouth.
Our cousins.
Mr. Harding,
the Quakers and the Baptists were the founders of this town.
It was quite a privilege to listen to you in your proud presentation. I'm sure you're very, very pleased with what happened, but what a valuable asset to the town. We really appreciate your presentation.
Really interesting.
Work you've done. It sure is.
You look really dapper tonight.
I'm an old man. Trust me, I use a cane. I'm still enthused about this stuff.
I'm a historian. I'm a historian myself, so I really appreciate what you've done.
I didn't think anybody was going to be able to top Beverly Glennon's book and how thick it was. I did not think someone was going to top Beverly Glennon's book and that thickness of that book that she had written years ago. But 1,600 pages, yeah, I think you trumped that completely 10 times over. I mean, that book.
I'm proud of what we've done. I didn't do this myself.
You should be proud.
You got to believe me. We've got a whole crew of people who've been working on this. Volunteers, Dartmouth volunteers.
Yep. Mr. Harding, while you've thanked us for listening to you, I thank you and your group for doing this. In December, I traveled to several different countries in Europe, and I mean, their history makes ours look very small, but the way that they have captured it and have shared their history with their residents and with the visitors, it's something that we need to do more of.
Well,
to make sure that we...
I'm doing my best to help.
Thank you.
And I appreciate this. You know, Mr. Mickelson.
Yes, sir.
His father, his father-in-law, and mother-in-law used to play golf at Pascamasset Links,
Oh,
which
boy.
is no longer here. It's in Smith, was in Smith Mills.
He was the first president.
And I caddied for him.
Yeah, well, nice.
They were good golfers.
Yeah.
But, how about?
Hoping we're better than him.
Thank you very much.
God bless.
Okay, wonderful. I gotta start reading.
He's quite
Yeah.
a gentleman, my God.
Okay, next. Thanks again. Spread appointment of Dartmouth representative, Mr. McGinnis.
Serpent, yes, with Cody
Serpent,
Haddad
excuse me.
leaving, his departure, we need a representative at Serpent for the town of Dartmouth. I've spoken with Christine O'Grady, and she's willing to be the Serpent in Cody's place until we find a replacement.
Okay.
The board would just need to appoint her.
Motion to approve Christine O'Grady to the Serpent appointment for the Dartmouth representative.
Second.
Second. Any discussion or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, I hear none. Thank you, Christine, for stepping forward.
Bless her.
Okay, license renewals. These are all subject to the police chief, fire chief, and director of inspectional services approval. Motor agent, Class 1, Toyota of Dartmouth and Colonial South Chevrolet.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I hear none. Approved, Class 1. Class 2, Better Auto, Clear Auto, Elite Auto Sales, M&G Custom Mini Corp., M&M Auto Service, Joe's Used Cycle, Sylvia's Auto Parts, Inc.
Motion to approve.
Second with discussion.
Okay, questions?
Are there going to be on-site inspections of these facilities?
I can check with Chris Meestrode and Joe Braga to see.
Please, because I've received phone calls regarding one of the sites.
Oh, okay.
Do we want to wait for approval on that?
Well, it's all subject to the approval of,
Right.
Inspectional services,
Okay, right,
right?
right.
They've all applied,
Their renewals, yes.
their renewals, they've applied for renewals. Okay.
So-
I thought one was defunct, so I'm,
Right, once we,
what was that?
I thought one was defunct.
No,
No?
okay.
no, it's,
Change of address?
yes.
Okay.
So we are voting on these with an absolute subject of approval by the police chief, fire chief, and the Board of Health, we may add if they need it, and Director of Inspectional Services approval. Okay?
Yes.
Any other comments or questions? All in favor, Class 2 motor agent, please say aye.
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 I hear no negative, so the Class 2 approval is there. Town Administrator update.
Yes, so as Gary had mentioned earlier, we've started the budget process with the departments. They've all submitted, mostly the smaller departments have already submitted their budgets. This year, we've asked department heads to create the salary schedule worksheets for their departments. In the past, the finance office has provided the information. This year, we want the department heads to take more of an ownership of creating their budgets and seeing, how the salary schedules are put together. So they've been great. They've been turning them in, so that's a change. And also, as we mentioned, we're asking them to take a keener look at the 6 to 10 year capital plan to identify potential projects in the future. And Green Communities, we received some grant awards from Green Communities, $105,381 for variable frequency drives, heat pumps, and mechanical installation at multiple schools. We also received an $87,000 GAP grant for installing an energy management system and 2 ductless heat pumps in the lab area of the wastewater treatment plant. We also received 2 Seaport Economic Council grant awards, one for $40,000 for the dredging feasibility study of Payneham Harbor and $32,000 for an economic study of the harbor. Procurement-wise, we request for qualifications for the Recreation Center owner project manager are due January 19th, so those will be in. We're anticipating good responses on those. In the broadband study, request for qualifications to do the study, those proposals are due January 17th. I just have to commend the DPW on their cleanup of the last winter storm. I think many of you on the board here in the town saw the pictures along Smith Neck Road and upon Agansett Landing of the flooding. DPW DPW went out and was able to clear the area and make the road passable again as soon as the storm had finished. And as human resources in our office, we had the vacancy with the licensing clerk. We've hired a part-time employee in the select board office to provide administrative support. Her name's Amy Imbo. She'll be providing part-time support while we evaluate the replacement of the current position. We're not planning on replacing it as a licensing position because all of our licensing is online. We'll be able to gain that efficiency, so we're looking at whether it's necessary to do that and what some other options would be. I'm meeting with the library trustees tomorrow to discuss the library director search. As you know, Lynn Antunes will be retiring in March. And in employee training, we have a 6-session management training course that starts this week, and we have 20 of our department heads and supervisory staff that will be attending that training, and it's to provide management training on how to be better managers and how to communicate with their staff, how to develop their staff, how to develop themselves. So we're excited about the start of this. Denise Bosing, our HR director, has put this training together, and we're really excited to see what the benefits are. And lastly, our website, we have a draft template of the website that the vendor has created for us, and we're currently evaluating that, its colors and setup, and I'll be sharing that with the board once it's been reviewed internally. So, and the goal for that launch of the website is looking at the end of February, early March.
Question?
That's all I have.
Mrs. Brooks?
I just have a comment regarding the DPW cleanup of the storm, which was amazing, but the pictures showed the concerns that we had a few meetings back about what happened to Apponeganset. This was like that 100-year storm where Apponeganset Beach was no more. It was all completely underwater, and certainly gave me pause looking at it to think this is not a someday, but it's
Yes.
Just hit us.
it's happening. It's happening.
Yeah, they did a great job.
That was one. And then on the department head training, is that mandatory, optional?
It's not mandatory.
Okay. Could you give us a report on how many attended?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Mr. McDonald, any comment on that? The library trustee, you'll be meeting with them. We certainly want to have some kind of appropriate acknowledgement. Maybe you can talk to them about
Yes.
getting something here in our office at the right time.
We will.
In our meeting, I should
I
say.
have that on the tentative agenda.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm sure you did. Okay, all set?
Yeah, all set.
Next would be old business. Mr. McGinnis.
Yes, so Bliss Corner, no new updates there. Lake Nokichoke, no new updates. The municipal broadband, you heard that the RFQ responses are due on the 17th. And I've made a note to add the Mass DEP Title V amendments under old business. So if it's not on the current agenda, we will touch base and give an update.
Okay. Minutes of October 31. Any comments or questions, or do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Questions? All in favor of approving the minutes of October 31, 2022, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I hear none. Approved. A select board update. Comments?
I don't have anything.
No, only let's get out December 18th to UMass Dartmouth. I'm
January.
sorry, January. Pardon me.
Ms. Brooks?
That'd be great, 2023, right?
While we were talking about the library, I just wanted to let the viewing public know to check out the library website. There's a number of events happening there this week. This month, we have conversations about books. There's 3 different dates. One has passed. One is Tuesday, January 17th at 2 o'clock, and one on January 31st. I'm not telling you the authors because I want you to look it up. Also, the Molly Little art film series is focusing on Leonardo da Vinci and the Italian High Renaissance. So if that is something that has interested you, on Tuesdays from 11 to noon, starting January 24th, ending February 28th, every Tuesday, there'll be another piece to learn about Leonardo da Vinci. Very interesting.
Okay.
I also wanted to mention that town and regional resource pamphlet was put together by Dolores Joseph, after the December 19th, I think it was the December 19th event, and it's really comprehensive, so little shout out for her.
Nice.
Okay. Mr. Gracie?
No, I'm good.
Okay, I just want to emphasize, as I said before, looking forward to a fairly aggressive schedule on these workshops with boards and committees, certainly not excluding, but including the ZBA, a fire district 1, 2, and 3, the DPW and others. We're going to keep it going, and I thought tonight's meeting was thoughtful, well prepared, and I think we got a lot done, and I think they deserve recognition at the Finance Committee that they want to collaborate, they want to do their job, they know the restrictions of what they're supposed to do, but it was, I thought, very productive, and thank you once again to them. Anybody else? Mr. McDonald?
No, I'm good.
Mr. McDonald?
So you want a motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
I do.
Okay.
Stanley could do it, you know.
Yeah, motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Okay, I'll second his motion.
Okay. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I hear none. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Good night.